Welcome to the Soul Touched by Dogs podcast, the show for dog lovers who see dogs not as toys or tools, but wise souls worth our respect and care. I'm Anke Herman, and I'm your host. I talk to awesome humans, people who do great work for dogs and their people. So come and join us for today's conversation. Hello and welcome, Tessa. I'm very excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about that too. Thank you.
Awesome. So, well, let's start out as we always start out. Let people know where in this lovely world you're based and what's your business with dogs.
I am based in Nova Scotia, Canada, which is for the last 7 years. Before that, I'm from the Netherlands, and after that in Norway. So I have traveled a little bit, but I'm here to stay. And my business, I started here, and my business is called PuzzleDog.
Well, so you like it cold then, don't you?
I
You
don't
always
mind
kind of
winters.
scrape around the cold edges.
Yeah. I really don't mind winters, no.
That's funny. So PuzzleDog. Now, well, I'm thinking puzzle, I'm thinking dog. So how did they come together? What does it mean?
Yeah,
And
I think many people these days talk about a canine enrichment, and most people are familiar with that. But um, um, my puzzle craziness roots from a long time ago when my dog Puck was still a puppy, or like 6 months old. I started to do puzzles with her using the Dutch method Herschenwerk. So, and Herschenwerk is translated, it's just brain work to make it easier, is a method where we are really looking at connection and at making a puzzle session as beneficial as it can be. And that's how I came to the name PuzzleDog, where I help people introduce that method to do puzzles with their dog, and it's mainly homemade puzzles, but of course I love the store-bought puzzles as well, so we use those too. And that's where the name comes from, and it's all about mental stimulation for dogs.
it's so cool. It's such a cool name. It's kind of like, it's almost like you can't unsee it. Now, so I'm interested in a bunch of things. First of all, what's the main benefit of mental stimulation for a dog? And like, how does it actually work? Because in my mind, I looked at your Instagram account, right? And I'm like seeing all these bits and bobs on the floor there. And I'm like, oh, that looks like Ace Freework, right? So
Yes, yeah,
what's
and
the
actually that is
difference?
something.
And
Yeah, yeah. Uh, the Herschenwerk method is not what you see on my Instagram right now. And that's that is a method where you just work with one puzzle or one thing to solve, and where the dog and the owner are both involved, and where you work together. And so that's a thing that is about bonding, and the I think activating the seeking system, so releasing all those happy hormones, making the dog feel calmer, growing confidence, all those benefits, what you also see with Ace Freework, you also see with doing puzzles the Herschenwerk way. What you see on my website and is my sensory room, which actually after I started out as with Herschenwerk, but then of course studied more. So I did a lot of Ace Freework courses with Sarah Fisher, and then I became a dynamic dog practitioner. And with all that knowledge, uh, my sensory room was developed, which is a mixture of everything I know. And that's what you see on my Instagram. So that's
so that means it's not surprising that it kind of looks a little similar, but
absolutely,
it's
yes.
it's
Yeah.
basically, so I mean, let me kind of repeat back to you what I'm hearing here. So the difference between like Ace Freework, the idea is like you set all these different things up and the dog goes in there and you're only, and the whole point is that your dog can just potter around by themselves and your only job is to observe, versus what you're saying in the puzzles is like you are actually there, literally, like you kind of doing it together. It's like if you're not just sending your kids in the playroom, you actually play with your kid.
Actually, in the sensory room, I do send the dog out and observe. But with Herschenwerk, so when I do one puzzle at a time, I am there. But if I set up my sensory room, it is more like Ace Freework. But in Ace Freework, they also do interaction games, like counting games, those kind of interaction games with the dog, and I don't do that. So I stay away from the dogs. I really let them be on their own
to figure out the puzzles. Have you ever had a case where like if a dog's just not interested in the puzzle, or like how do you, like, do they know what to do with the thing? Like if there's something on the floor, like do they know what to do?
No, but we get it. It's a little bit mixed up, of course, now, because when I have my Herschenwerk puzzles, I'm there. So I have only one puzzle between me and the dog, and we can work on it together. So I start extremely easy, and that's actually the power of Herschenwerk.
Yeah.
Where we do it in tiny little steps. Look at the dog. What can you handle? What can you solve? When do you get frustrated? Do we need to take a step back? Do we need to take a step forward? Can you go faster? And because the human is so close, you can really look at the tiny little signs the dog gives you. Yeah. And then you're able to step in when needed and back out when needed too. Yeah. But it's really what you will see if you would look at the first videos I took with my dog Puck. We were communicating in big words, to say that, we needed a lot of things to communicate, and now it's like her tiny ear is like wiggling, or her body says something, and I know what she means. And it's the same for her. If I press record on my phone, she knows she can start. And in the earlier days, I told her, you can start now. And so we in those 10 years we do this together, we have optimized our communication in such a way that we are able to read each other in tiny letters. To say it
I love that. I love that. And I mean that makes I mean it makes a lot of sense, because in a way what you're just describing, it sounds like, oh, so you're setting your dog up for lots and lots of little successes along the way, and sort of little dopamine hits. But I think you also get to know each other and understand each other on a whole different level, and that would translate outside of the playroom as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, immediately. Yes. You know each other so well that you are also so focused on that communication. So even if you don't know what your dog tells you yet, because it's something new, then you know that they are telling you something. So you are open for that communication once you have learned to look for it. So and that translates into everything in life. If we are in the mood of always training our dogs and always telling them what to do, then our focus is not that much on what they communicate back to us.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And with Herschenwerk, it's their thing, and we are literally sitting on a couple of square meters and communicating with each other. And that's the beautiful thing about it, that you will really be able to learn to get to know your dog better. And I have had people that have an amazing bond with their dog already, are like, I didn't think it would become better, but it did.
Wow, that's incredible. So what do people usually have a specific outcome in mind? Like if somebody comes to you and says, Tessa, can we do some PuzzleDog work? I want to do a PuzzleDog with my dog. Like, is there usually is it just because of curiosity, or do they come and say, hey, can this help with X? So what does usually inspire somebody to come to you?
Most of the time, it's people that are interested to learn more, to get more of the benefits. Maybe because their dog is always tearing stuff apart, or is just throwing things around, or they don't know how to make the session relaxed and calm, and in a way that they are actually learning from each other. So they struggle with setting up a puzzle session. But I also guide people who have senior dogs, for example, that are changing their ways in life, and that are harder to understand because they were used to be like this, and now all of a sudden they see changes going on. And I created a program for that. And also for dogs that have physical issues, like they have had surgery, or they have something that stays there. what is making them not be able to do a lot of walks, or less physical exercise. And people always say, yeah, you just have to do enrichment with those dogs. And I have something like, oh, but you need to do that safely, because you can actually re-hurt a dog when you just give them a treat ball on the slippery floor and let them figure it out.
Yeah. So, I mean, are there different kind of gadgets or tools, or, like, how would you say, if I'm now going and like, okay, look, Mrs. Goofball Leia, I would love to see what she does, because she's actually quite, like, usually in normal life, you always think, boy, that dog's too clever for her own good, right? So if I'm thinking, hey, we want to do a puzzle, like, where would I start? Like, what do I need? How do I go about it? Could I do it on my own, or would I need you to help me set it up so I don't do it wrong? So what would you say, how to get started?
The best thing to get started is I gave you a link to a little mini course, and that actually describes how do you set up, how do you structure your session, and what materials can you think about. So that will help you a lot to just get started with your dog. My number one material to use is just a towel. So if people want to get started, I always tell them, just grab a towel, and don't start with the famous towel roll, because you probably see your dog just biting holes in it or shaking it or whatever. And that's because you didn't give the manual. Um, um, and so I like to have the towel flat on the floor with a tiny little bit wrinkles in there. Just sprinkle some treats and let the dog just sniff those out. And then you start to scrunch it up more and more and more, so the sniffing becomes more and more intense. With the Herschenwerk method, you like to stay under the high excitement threshold. Strong emotions, whether they are happy or frustrated or angry or whatever they are, strong emotions don't help you when you want to think.
True.
And so when you are a little bit frustrated, you are really in the mode to solve something. But if you tip over the edge, it doesn't help anymore. So yes. That's where I try to look at. Where is this dog? How does this dog feel? And do I need to make it more difficult, or do I need to make it easier?
That makes sense. That makes sense. So in your experience, so how often does somebody like is that something you do every day, or do you think like, oh, every now and then in conjunction with something else, or what would you recommend?
It depends on the schedule of the humans themselves. I always say do something what fits you, because if you do it, if you think I have to do this daily, or I have to do this twice daily or 3 times a week, then it's the have to, which takes the fun out of it for you yourself. Yes. So it needs to fit in your own schedule. We developed a system that every coffee time and tea time. We are demanding puzzles in this household, but that's just how we do it. And I never tell people that they need to do it the same way, because if it doesn't fit in your schedule, it's not going to happen, and it's not going to be fun, and you're not going to be able to just be there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how long is a session? Like, I would imagine it wouldn't be that long. Like, you're not sitting there for 2 hours banging on about
I would say anything between 5 and 20 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, and so is that true? Is that, like, I heard that that like sort of when dogs like sniff and are engaged like that, it tires them out more than a long walk. Is that your experience as well?
It tires them out in a different way. So the one is the physical fatigue, and the other one is mental fatigue. So I wouldn't replace one with the other, because dogs need both. You want a strong and healthy body as well. But on a rainy day, you surely can do an extra session or whatever, just to make sure you get some fun activity together.
Yeah. So it's about, more than anything, about the bond, about the communication, about understanding each other. It's about the dog being able to, I don't know, like relax and kind of self-regulate in a sense.
Yes.
And basically everybody's having a bit of fun with it.
Yes, yeah, and that's what you want to try to do. A great example is, like, for example, the adolescent dogs, where we humans are having a time that it's hard to just stay positive at times, right? Because those brains go all over the place, and it's hard for us to not get frustrated with a lot of our adolescent dogs. And then a Herschenwerk session where you don't ask them to do something where they have to do something. So then you can just find out what does work for this dog, and how is he able to relax a little bit, and the human can just be with him and enjoy that too, and actually also see, oh, I do have a great dog here. we get out on the other side as well.
That's so true. That's so true. Actually, it's funny, because I literally spoke to somebody yesterday who said, I've got a lovely, whatever the dog was, can't remember, but it's like, well, but it's still like in that teenage phase, right? Like it's the right nutcase.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
that would help a lot then.
Yeah, and those are the moments that it's sometimes so hard to see the fun dog you thought you had, because it can be such a struggle to deal with them. And then if you have you use the way I use, then you can just start to see those 10 minutes in a day that you really have an awesome dog, and that you eventually will get out of it again. Yeah.
I love that. So you mentioned the little mini course that I've of course seen. Let people know where they can, obviously the link to the mini course, we're going to pop that in the show notes. Where can people go to get in touch with you, to find out more about your work?
The best way to find me is on my Facebook page, and of course on my website, puzzledog.ca. And I also have the Instagram account, which is called PuzzlePuck, because PuzzleDog was taken. and I always call my dog PuzzlePuck as a hashtag, so that's what Instagram became.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much. This was delightful. I'm gonna almost like, I can't wait to see what Mrs. Goofball Leia does with that.
Me too. Send me a video.
I will. Thank you so much. And I'll have to talk to you again soon.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so other dog lovers can find the show. If you haven't already, head over to soultouchedbydogs.com and sign up for weekly doggy cuteness, tips, recommendations, and personal stories to warm your dog-loving heart. And if you know a awesome human you think I should interview, I'd love an introduction. Email me at Anke, that's ANKE, @soultouchedbydogs.com.